I didn't even get to sit down before he broke it off. The cafe was crowded, soft jazz playing from the overhead speakers, the scent of espresso and expensive desserts hanging in the air. I had barely taken 2 steps toward the table when Jason looked up from his untouched cappuccino and said, "We need to talk." My stomach dropped. I remember the way his voice sounded, flat, almost rehearsed. I sat anyway, my palms already damp. "What's going on?" I asked, forcing a smile. "Is this about the caterer?" He didn't answer that. Instead, he reached into his coat pocket and placed a small velvet box on the table, not to give it to me, but to take something back. "I can't marry you, Emily," he said. Just like that. 7 words that carved through me sharper than any scalpel I'd ever held. "What?" I whispered. He leaned back in his chair, as if the weight of honesty had finally set him free. "It's not you. It's just we're heading in different directions. I've made connections, important ones. Megan Langley and I were aligned in ways I didn't see before." Megan Langley, daughter of Gregory Langley, the venture capitalist who practically owned half the West Coast's tech startups. My heart began to race. "You're leaving me for her?" "It's not like that," he said, though it clearly was. "This is better for both of us. You deserve someone simpler." He didn't even flinch when I stared at him, stunned and silent, trying to understand how the man I was supposed to marry in 16 days could erase me so cleanly. Then, as if he hadn't gutted me enough, he added, "Also, the ring. It's a family heirloom. My grandmother would be devastated if it left the family." I slipped it off. My hands were shaking, but I did it. I placed it gently on the table between us and said, "Thank you for your honesty." Then I stood up and walked away, straight past the glass doors, past the couple sharing desserts, past the curious eyes trying to figure out what just happened. Only when I turned the corner onto Elm Street did the tears finally come. I didn't go back to the apartment we shared. I didn't want to see the half-packed boxes or the dress hanging in the closet. I couldn't face the silence, but when I arrived, it was already done. My things were in labeled suitcases by the door. Clothing, books, toiletries, all carefully sorted, as if I were being returned to sender. Not by Jason. He wouldn't have been that considerate. It had to be his mother. I sat on the floor beside those bags for I don't know how long. My old studio lease had ended. I'd given it to a nursing student a few weeks ago. Every cent I had saved had gone to the wedding. I had less than $100 in my account and a full week until payday. That's when I did the thing I hadn't done in over a year. I called my foster mom. Margaret Temple answered on the 3rd ring, her voice warm and steady like it always was. "Emily, honey, where have you been? I was about to call you about those shoes we looked at last week." I couldn't even speak. I choked on a sob instead. That was all it took. An hour later, I was curled on her faded plaid couch, cradling a mug of peppermint tea while she smoothed my hair like she used to when I was 13 and broken from yet another placement gone bad. Margaret didn't ask questions. She just placed a thick, knit blanket over my legs and said, "Stay as long as you need. You hear me? I've got space and you've got nothing to prove." That night, I didn't sleep. I lay there on the old pull-out bed in her living room, staring at the ceiling, replaying every detail of that conversation with Jason. His calmness, the way he didn't even hesitate. Had he ever really loved me? Or was I just a placeholder until someone with a last name like Langley showed up? By sunrise, the ache had dulled into something heavier, something like shame. I was supposed to be walking into a new life, a new chapter, a family of my own. Instead, I was back where I'd started. 28 years old, heartbroken, homeless, humiliated. At noon, I showered, dressed, and returned to the hospital as if nothing had happened. Nurses smiled. Some asked about the wedding plans. I smiled back, nodded, liet, because telling the truth felt like it would tear me open all over again. But as I changed into my scrubs and checked my patient assignments, I knew something for sure. I couldn't stay here forever. Not in this town. Not with these memories. Not while Jason Miller and Megan Langley toasted champagne to their bright, aligned future just across the state line, not when I had nowhere else to go and nothing left to lose. 3 days passed, 3 slow, aching days where I went through the motions on the hospital floor while trying to keep my insides from unraveling. I smiled when people asked about the wedding. I said it had been postponed. I said Jason had a business trip come up. I said I was fine. I said too much. But on the 3rd day, while I was checking in 4 line in room 8, Rachel, our blunt, no-nonsense charge nurse, peeked her head in and said, "You still looking for a miracle escape from this place?" I blinked. What? She motioned me out into the hallway and lowered her voice. "You remember Lily from Neuro? She took a private care job a month ago, live-in. High pay, but she quit last week. Couldn't handle the guy." "What guy?" Rachel raised an eyebrow. "Some rich tech mogul. Paralyzed. Lives up in Cypress Hill in one of those who even builds these kind of houses. Apparently he's a nightmare." "Sounds amazing. Pays triple what we make here. Live-in suite. Meals included. No roommates. No night shifts. Just one patient." I hesitated. "I'm not a caregiver." "You're a nurse with 5 years of experience," she shot back. "You're more qualified than half the people they've had. And trust me, this guy scares most of them off in under 2 weeks. You're stubborn. That might actually work in your favor." I almost laughed. I wasn't sure what part of me still counted as stubborn. Everything inside me felt cracked. But something in her voice, the word escape. It echoed, loudly. "Do you have a contact?" I asked. 10 minutes later, she handed me a small card with a name written in sharp, elegant cursive. Margaret Temple, estate manager. And beneath it, a number. It took me until midnight to call. I stood in the back alley of Margaret's house in my coat, breathing in cold Montana air, phone shaking in my hand. Margaret Temple picked up on the 2nd ring. "Yes." "This is Emily Carter. I was told there's a position for a live-in nurse." A pause. Then, "Are you available for an interview tomorrow morning at 9? I blinked. "Yes, I can be there." "Bring your credentials and references. The address will be texted shortly. Do not be late." The line went dead. At 4:30 a.m., I boarded the earliest flight out of Helena to San Francisco, connecting to a regional shuttle that climbed the hills of Cyprus until it left the real world behind. Everything felt like a dream I hadn't earned. And then I saw the house. It looked like a modern fortress, glass, steel, and sharp edges woven into the cliffside as if someone had carved a mansion out of sunlight and stone. A long black gate swung open as my cab approached, and for a second, I wanted to tell the driver to turn around. Too late. Margaret Temple met me at the front door. A woman in her 60s, thin as wire, hair pulled into a tight twist, dark blue suit without a wrinkle. She looked me up and down with the precision of someone who had worked in either the military or a hospital. "You're early," she said. "I didn't want to be late." "Good. Follow me." The interview was swift. She glanced over my resume, asked 4 questions, didn't smile once, and finally said, "The position is yours, Miss Carter. The terms are simple. Round-the-clock availability. 2 days off per month. No visitors. Medical knowledge is crucial. Discretion is non-negotiable. Your patient is a complicated man. You will be living on the 2nd floor, adjacent to his suite. Meals and lodging are included. Salary, $12,000 per month, plus performance bonus depending on the condition's progression." I tried not to react. I still remember gripping the arms of the chair to keep from laughing out loud. It was more than triple what I made at the hospital. I didn't have a plan. I didn't have anything but an overstuffed duffel bag and a bleeding heart. But I said yes. I said it without hesitating. Margaret slid a folder across the table. "This is your contract. Review it before tomorrow. Your patient is Mr. Ryan Hale." The name meant nothing to me then. It would soon mean everything. The next morning, I stood outside his door, folder in hand, heart thudding. The hallway was quiet, hushed by the kind of carpet that swallowed footsteps. Everything about this house was polished and cold. Stone floors, sleek lines, expensive silence. Margaret stood beside me, clipboard pressed to her chest. "You're sure you want this?" she asked without looking at me. I signed the contract. "That's not what I asked." I swallowed. "Yes." She knocked twice, then opened the door without waiting for a response. The room was large, too large. Vaulted ceilings, glass walls looking out over a stretch of redwood trees. Sunlight bleeding across pale hardwood floors. It felt less like a bedroom and more like a throne room built for a ghost. He was by the window, in a sleek black wheelchair, back to us. "Mr. Hale," Margaret said crisply, "your new nurse has arrived. Emily Carter." He didn't turn right away, just sat there, fingers slowly tapping the armrest. Then, finally, he pivoted, and my breath caught. I don't know what I expected. An older man, maybe. Someone frail. But Ryan Hale was young. Maybe mid-30s. Tall even while seated. Short dark hair. Sharp jawline, eyes like cut glass. And yet there was something exhausted about him. His skin was pale, his frame lean, but his expression was the thing that warned me. He looked at me like I was already disappointing him. "So," he said, voice low and biting, "they sent me another one." I opened my mouth to speak, but he cut me off. "What's the bet this time, Margaret? A week? 10 days?" Margaret didn't answer. She only said, "I'll leave you two to get acquainted," and left, shutting the door behind her. Silence stretched. "I'm not here to place bets," I said finally. "Just to do my job." He rolled his chair a few feet closer, examining me like I was a piece of art he didn't particularly like. "And what job do you think that is?" "Medication, physical therapy, monitoring vitals, supporting rehabilitation." He snorted. "You forgot the part where you nod sympathetically while I fail to walk again. That's usually everyone's favorite part." I didn't flinch. "I'm not here to pity you." He tilted his head slightly. "Oh, that's new. Most of them crack by day 3. Maybe I'll surprise you." "Maybe," he said, though the smirk that curled at the edge of his mouth made it clear he didn't believe a word. We went through the day in stiff silence. I administered medication, reviewed his physical therapy plan, took notes. Ryan kept making barbed comments, testing me, pushing. But I didn't bite. I'd worked with veterans who lost limbs, teenagers who screamed through every injection, mothers who wept through morphine highs. Ryan Hale was not going to scare me. That evening, as I prepped his room for the night, he said suddenly, "You're not what I expected." I looked up from the drawer. "No." "You haven't asked about the accident. I figured you'd tell me if you wanted to." Another pause. Another surprise. "It was a ski trip," he said finally. "Solo. I lost control on a ridge. Woke up in a helicopter. Haven't stood unaided since." I nodded. "Thank you for telling me." He stared at me for a long time. "Why'd you take this job?" "I needed it. Not the money." "Why this job?" I met his eyes. "Because I've been lied to. Because I know what it's like to be thrown away." His expression changed just for a second, like a crack in a wall that shouldn't be there. Then he turned back to the window. "Don't get attached," he said. "I don't do gratitude, and I don't do friendship." "Good," I replied. "I don't do illusions." He didn't say anything after that, but he didn't dismiss me either. It happened on the 5th night. I wasn't supposed to be awake, but the wind outside had been howling since midnight, shaking the windows like some restless ghost couldn't decide whether to come in or stay out. I got up to close the blinds and spotted the light still on in the West Wing gym, an area Ryan rarely allowed anyone into alone. At first, I ignored it. I told myself he probably fell asleep watching TV in there. But something tugged at me, something quiet and instinctive. I slipped on my sweater, padded down the silent hall, and pushed the gym door open just enough to peek through. And what I saw stopped everything. Ryan Hale was standing. Not completely, not unaided. He was gripping a pair of parallel bars, his arms tense with strain, sweat dripping down his temple. His legs trembled beneath him, every muscle taut, but he was doing it. Slowly, determinately, step by painstaking step. My breath caught. He didn't notice me at first, he was too focused, but the soft creak of the door gave me away. He turned, saw me, and his expression shifted instantly from effort to rage. "What the hell are you doing?" he snapped. "I heard something. I thought, get out." "Ryan, now." I didn't move. I couldn't. Not because I was frozen, but because something in my chest had already changed. He wasn't hopeless. He wasn't finished. He was hiding progress. Why? Why are you keeping this a secret? I asked softly, his hands clenched tighter around the bars, knuckles white. Because the minute people see progress, they expect miracles. That's not how healing works. He laughed bitterly. No, but it's how disappointment works. I've already watched people walk away once they realized I wasn't going to magically rise out of the chair and be who I was again. I'm not doing that again. So instead, you pretend there's nothing left? That you've given up? His jaw tightened. You don't get it. I stepped closer, carefully, like approaching a wounded animal. Maybe I do. His eyes locked onto mine, furious, uncertain. I'm not going to tell anyone, I said. But if you let me help you, really help you, we can work toward something better. You don't have to do this alone. Why? He demanded. Why do you care? Because I know what it's like to have your future ripped away and be expected to smile through the pieces. He stared at me, breathing hard, sweat gleaming on his skin. I thought he'd yell again, order me out, threaten to fire me. Instead, he lowered himself slowly back into the chair, silent, exhausted. Finally, he muttered, "Fine." My heart jumped. "We keep this between us," he added. No one knows." "I understand." "And you follow my lead. I say stop, we stop. I say go, you help. That's it." "Agreed." He studied me, eyes still sharp, but something had shifted. Something unspoken. "You're not like the others." I shrugged. "I'm not trying to be." We started the sessions the next morning. Early, quiet, before Margaret stirred, before the sunlight fully warmed the kitchen tiles. Each step he took was agony. Controlled, measured, like fighting gravity with nothing but spite and muscle memory. But he did it, and I was there, not to cheer, not to weep, just to support. One hand steadying the world he didn't want to fall in. It started with a voice. I was organizing the meds cabinet in my room when I heard it. Deep, confident, too smooth. Male, not Ryan, not a house staff member. Curious. I moved quietly toward the main hallway and followed the sound into the west sitting room. There, lounging on the leather couch, was a man in his early 40s, expensive watch glinting in the morning sun, holding a glass of something that wasn't juice. "Ryan, you look like hell," the man laughed. Ryan, across from him, offered a tight smile. "Good to see you too, Eric." That was my introduction to Eric Thorne, Ryan's longtime business partner. The man who, according to Margaret, had stepped up to manage Hale Nexus Technologies after Ryan's accident. Something about him made my skin crawl. Maybe it was the way he looked at Ryan like he was still measuring his worth. Or maybe it was how his eyes landed on me when I walked in with the tea tray. Slow, assessing, invasive. "This the new one?" he asked. "Emily Carter," I said evenly, setting down the tray. "She any better than the last three?" Eric quipped, sipping his drink. "She's not here to entertain you," Ryan replied coldly. "She's my nurse." The conversation turned to business. Mergers, investor tensions, government contracts. I tried to stay invisible, but one word froze me where I stood. "Langley." Eric leaned in, lowering his voice. Laura says her father's ready to push the funds through. We just need the control package transferred to the shell. Langley Capital will absorb it. He's got contacts in the tech board. Easy in. Ryan didn't respond. He stared out the window, knuckles tight against the armrest. I've already prepped the docs, Eric continued. We just need your signature. Later, Ryan said. I'll look them over. You've been saying that for weeks. If we wait much longer, the opportunity closes. Ryan didn't answer. My pulse thundered in my ears. I slipped out of the room before either of them noticed. I was still standing there. Langley. Laura Langley. That name still haunted me. And then it clicked. Langley Capital. Laura. Eric's push for Ryan's signature. The company. They were trying to take it. Strip control while Ryan was still recovering. And if Laura was involved, Megan Langley couldn't be far behind. My chest tightened as I returned to my room and shut the door. Was this connected to what happened to me? Was I just a bystander caught in the crossfire of something bigger? Or had they chosen me for this, for being the girl no one would suspect? That night, I couldn't keep it in. As I helped Ryan with his stretching exercises, I broke the silence. There's something I overheard today about your company. He didn't look at me. Go on. I told him everything verbatim. Names, phrases, tone. I even mentioned Megan Langley. At that he paused. You know her. My ex-fiancé left me for her. He blinked slowly. Jason Miller? I nodded. You know him? No, but I've heard the name through Eric. He rolled away from the wall and stared at me. Are you suggesting that my business partner and your ex are, what, in on something together? I'm suggesting it's too much of a coincidence. He didn't say anything for a long moment. Then, finally, I'll review the documents. That was it. I tried not to feel crushed. I'd hoped for more, maybe belief, maybe action. But instead, Ryan returned to silence, like everything I said had gone straight into a void. That night, I paced my room like a cage thing. Was I wrong? Was I imagining shadows? Or worse, was I right and no one would believe me? The next morning, he knocked on my door. He never knocked. When I opened it, Ryan sat in his wheelchair, a folder in his lap. You were right, he said. Langley Capital isn't just investing. The paperwork transfers decision-making rights and ownership to a holding company Eric formed 2 months ago, hidden under layers. My breath caught. I want you to help me stop them. He handed me the folder. Are you sure? I asked. After everything? Ryan nodded. If they think I'm too weak to fight, then they've forgotten who I was before I broke. The plan took days to finalize. Every night, after the staff had gone quiet and the windows had gone dark, Ryan and I sat across from each other at the long oak table in the study, poring over documents and strategy notes. His hands trembled from exhaustion sometimes, but his voice stayed steady. He was building a war room, piece by piece, and I was his only ally inside the walls. He'd already contacted his attorney. They were gathering records, emails, contracts, bank trails. Ryan had hidden nothing from me, not even his doubts. I trusted Eric more than anyone, he said one night. He was there the day I pitched my first app. I let him speak on my behalf when I couldn't walk. And all this time, you were right to trust your gut, I told him. I was late to do it, he replied, but I won't be late again. 1 week later, a special meeting of the board was called. No one suspected anything. Ryan let Eric think the signature was coming. He even thanked him in an email for handling things so well. That same afternoon, he suited up. It was the first time I saw him in a full tailored suit. Midnight blue, crisp, handsome in a way that made my heart slow. His body was still weak, but something about the way he moved, proud, upright, made the air in the room shift. He practiced walking to the conference table with a cane. Just 10 steps, then 15, then 20. I want them to see it, he said, with their own eyes. The day of the meeting, We arrived 15 minutes early. The building was all glass and chrome, and too much silence. Heads turned as we entered. Ryan, walking beside me, jaw set, steps measured but firm. Shock rippled through the halls like an electric current. In the boardroom, Eric sat at the head of the table. Laura was there too, in a dove-gray suit, legs crossed, lips painted like war. And beside her, Jason. He looked smaller than I remembered. Still handsome, still smug, but less polished now, like something borrowed that hadn't been returned quite right. When Ryan stepped into the room, cane in hand, the silence snapped. "You're walking," Eric said. "Not perfectly," Ryan replied, "but enough." He didn't sit at the far end. He walked directly to the head of the table, paused, and looked Eric dead in the eyes. "This meeting is now under my authority," he said calmly, "and I'll begin with this." He placed a folder on the table and flipped it open. The room watched as he laid out every forged trail, every backdoor clause, every proof of Eric's attempt to hand control of Hale Nexus Technologies to a private shell company owned by Langley Capital. Laura didn't flinch. Jason shifted uncomfortably. Eric's face slowly drained of color. "You can't prove intent," Eric muttered. "I don't have to," Ryan replied. "I only have to prove breach of fiduciary duty, which I just did." The board stirred. The general counsel stood. "Mr. Hale, would you like to request an immediate vote of no confidence?" "I would," Ryan said. "Effective immediately." Chaos erupted. Laura rose first, her heels clicking like gunshots. "You don't know who you're messing with, Ryan." "Oh, I do," he said softly. "A woman who hides behind her father's name, and a man who sells out everything for a shortcut." She scoffed. "And your nurse?" "What? She's your co-founder now." Ryan turned to look at me. "She's the reason I'm standing here at all." Jason looked away. The board voted. It was unanimous. Eric was removed. The contracts nullified. Control reverted. When it was done and the room cleared out, Ryan and I stayed behind. Alone. He leaned on his cane, breathing hard, but his eyes shone. "You did it," I whispered. "No," he said. "We did." And then just for a second he smiled, wide and full and real. And I realized something I hadn't let myself believe until that moment. He wasn't the only one who'd taken his first steps that day. Weeks passed. The mansion no longer felt like a mausoleum. The windows were open more often. Light poured into the halls, and even the garden, once dry and overgrown, breathed again. Ryan still had hard days, still limped, still had to brace against pain. But the bitterness that used to trail behind every step had started to lift. So had mine. The wedding I never had, I stopped mourning it. The name I almost took, I let it go. Slowly, I began seeing myself as more than just someone who'd been discarded. I started reading again, running short laps on the private trail behind the house, laughing without guilt. Ryan made it a point to cook one night a week, even though he burned rice and cursed at the stove like it owed him something. I let him. I sat at the kitchen island, legs curled up, smiling at his frustration. That was our ritual, small, unspoken, but ours. One night he handed me a dish I couldn't identify and said, "If this kills you, I want it on record I tried." "You'll get the company in the will," I deadpanned. He paused. "Actually, no." I looked up. "I transferred it to a trust," he said. "One that includes you." I blinked. "What?" "I'm not giving you the company," he said gently. "But I want you to know I built something better with you than I ever did with anyone else. And I want you to be part of what's next." I stared at him. "Ryan!" He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small black box. "Before you say anything," he said quickly, "you don't have to answer today, or even this year. I know I'm still learning how to be a person again, and I know you didn't sign up for this." He opened the box. Inside was a ring, simple, gold, one tiny sapphire in the middle. "But I'd like to ask anyway," he said, voice low. "Will you consider walking this road with me? Not because I need saving, but because with you I remember who I am. I didn't cry. I thought I might. But instead, I felt something else, something steady. A sense of arrival. Like I'd walked through the darkest part of the forest and found, not a castle, but a clearing. A quiet place to breathe again. I took the ring, slid it onto my finger. I'm not saying yes, I whispered, smiling. But I'm not saying no. He laughed. That sounds exactly like you. We didn't rush. There were no grand announcements. No headlines. Just more mornings. More progress. He walked half a mile on his own the following month. I passed my certification to open my own private practice. We hired more staff. I stayed in the house, but it no longer felt like his. It felt like ours. As for Jason, he texted once, 2 lines, asking if I was okay. I never replied. I didn't need to, because the truth was I'd already gotten everything I was supposed to get from that heartbreak. A lesson, a detour, and a doorway into the life I hadn't even dared to imagine. And Ryan? He stopped using the chair altogether by the fall. On his birthday, we took a short trip up to the coast. Just us. He walked beside me down the beach at sunset, sand clinging to our feet, the wind cold enough to sting. At one point, he looked out over the ocean and said, "You think we'll ever go back to who we were before at all?" I shook my head. I hope not. He turned to me, and I added, because who we became is better. He didn't respond. He just reached for my hand and didn't let go.